doing well? Well, we'll give it another minute or two and then we'll get started. What's that? Yeah. Oh, you can turn on the music now. Oh, is it coming from there? Yeah. What's up, dude? I'm sorry to set a load of this.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I got this. And you're gonna move this for me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll actually get started on time, which is rare. So welcome, guys. Happy, what's that? Hey, that's on time for me. That's happy Tuesday, the beginning of fall, although it certainly doesn't feel that way as of late, but I very much welcome summer. So great stuff. A lot of new faces, obviously some familiar faces. The office continues to grow and evolve. I always remind everyone the #1 KW office in California in profitability by far, out of well over 100. Actually ranked, like, as of year to date, we're like number 16 in the country out of 826. And I always say, who's counting? Well, you know the answer to that, right? I am, right? And that is totally, a product of your commitment and all the production and the great skill and the effort and the commitment every one of you guys make. And I think the foundation of that, I know the foundation of that is how collaborative we are and how much we learn and elevate and share with one another. And that is truly what distinguishes this office, is that culture. You know, authenticity, transparency, humility, diversity. Those are things that elevate everyone. And the more we engage and the more we plug in, the more we elevate, the more we learn from one another. And the commercial division, I look at John and Nate, who are both commercial and residential. We had our commercial meeting this morning every Tuesday at 9:30, and it is full and packed. And Austin Chen is obviously the major driver behind that, but it's always a team effort. So that's just an indication of what we're doing and where we're going. And with that always said is perpetually raising the bar. No matter where we are, there's always opportunity to become better. And that is something I'm committed to, and that's what I'm wired to do in life. And you guys drive me, and I get held accountable by all of you. And I really appreciate all that. So with that said, I always do a piece on mindset. I want to remind everyone we're having a special event tomorrow at the LAX Marriott about the one thing, the book, one of the books that Gary Keller wrote. What's the one thing that you can do such that everything else becomes either easier or unnecessary, which is all about how to prioritize, which is one of the absolute keys in life. So we're flying in a top agent coach who's going to be hosting that event from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's free. I think it is sold out. However, with that said, show up and I'll make sure you get in. I'll be there and Serena will be there. So LAX Marriott tomorrow, 10 a.m. The one thing from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So what I want to talk about, and that's why we need this sort of mindset. Mindset to me is 90% achievement, no matter what you do in life. And certainly that applies to our business, right? Which is all about a relationship business and the ability to be resilient and handle sort of rejection and not take it personally and continue to forge forward with discipline and consistency. So about 5 years ago, I saw a gentleman come speak at an event in Downey, actually. His name's Inky Johnson. Inky was a top college football player. And he got into a major incident on the field. And as a result, he was completely paralyzed in his arm. And it was a near-death experience. And, you know, he now speaks across the country about mindset and resilience. And it very much inspired me. That's something for anyone who spent any time around me knows how much that plays into my life. But of course, I never had to experience what Inky did. So do you want to move to that next slide? You know, he took that as an opportunity, right? We face challenges and obstacles every single day. They're all relative. The question is, how do we respond to them? And that is totally a personal choice. And for me, the foundation of that is gratitude and always looking for the silver lining in everything. So, you know, as it says here, amazing career, had a, multi-million-dollar contract on the table, and that got taken away, in an instant. So, I ask everyone here, think about how you would react and respond to that. And hearing his story on what he's done with that and taking that sort of tragedy and turned it into a blessing is pretty amazing. It's definitely puts things in context and perspective when we go through our own challenges. How do they compare with what other people have? And I try to instill that lesson in my son all the time. He's often, and most of us who have young kids or had young kids can relate, like, what don't I have? It's always about what I don't have, not like be grateful for all that you do have, right? And obviously that doesn't happen magically. That's a life lesson that you learn over time. But I think the more we embrace that lesson, the more we continue to forge forward and live much more fulfilling lives. So, again, turned it into a tragedy. The character and the vision was the silver lining in circumstances. And, it always comes back again to focusing on what you can control, right? Circumstances and things are going to happen around you all the time, right? Many of which you can't control. What you can control, again, is how you respond to it. So when you give all that energy to things that you can't control, you're just displacing that energy and taking it away from the things that you can. So I think that's a total lesson that Inky has lived his life. Again, mindset profoundly impacts, performance and, of course, happiness, right? I always say you find what you're looking for. You can find the problem, which is pretty easy to find, or you can find the solution, which sometimes may be a little more challenging, but you choose. Both exist, right? You can find the good in people or things, or you can find the bad. Both exist, you choose, right? So I think these are major, major lessons. Inky created this unbelievable platform to basically give back and tell his story. And in that process, before he became a speaker, he had so many people mobilize around him when he was at his lowest and really just poured into him and helped him turn that adversity into an opportunity. So that's part of the lesson as well, is that, hey, what are you doing to pour into others? How much are you contributing to other people, whether it's your clients, whether it's your family, whether it's your peers? Again, that's a choice. To me, it feels really good to positively impact others. I think most of us feel that way as well. I think we're wired, we're social beings, and we typically like to give. It feels good when we know we've made a positive impact. And that's certainly, and that can be difficult, particularly when you're in a really difficult situation and you're in a tough time. But again, when you come from gratitude, no matter how low you are, there's always opportunity for and hope that it will become better. And that's a big lesson that certainly Inky, creates awareness around. You can rise above your most adverse conditions and make it happen. Again, not always easy, but it's definitely an opportunity for everyone. And again, it comes back to environment. Choose to surround yourself with people that believe in you and they're interested in your well-being and are willing to give you their time and effort to help show you that there may be bigger and better possibilities. Part of what I always talk about, environment matters, which I wear on my wrist, is surrounding yourself with people who are doing things perhaps at a higher level than you are, at least for the moment, and seeing that there are bigger possibilities than you've ever seen before. And saying to yourself, which I hope you do, hey, I'm every bit as capable as they are. I just need to do the work or find the right way to do it. And that's part of that power of collaboration, right? Learning best practices from others. Don't reinvent the wheel, right? Model and emulate proven success. Okay. Questions, thoughts, anyone? Sorry, I was trying to make this more interactive and I'm doing too much talking. Come on, somebody. Nobody? Ian.
Sorry to avoid eye contact. That Johnson story is great. He's a great motivational speaker. To see what depths he had to crawl out of in order to become what he is today is just amazing. And if he can do this and he has one arm that isn't working, you know what I'm saying? Like what can we do? You know what I'm saying? We have really no excuse.
And that's the lesson, right? We don't have to go through what Inky went through, right? We don't have to have these, really bad things happen, right? But we can learn the lesson without it. Sometimes it's easier to learn the lesson with it, but hopefully we don't have to learn that lesson to embrace that philosophy and put it into perspective that, hey, we're fortunate to not have, can you imagine if you didn't have one arm, or one leg, right? So don't have to get there to be appreciative and have gratitude and be really committed to something, right? And hopefully that something is something bigger than just yourself. Anyone else want to? Thanks, Ian. You're awesome. Having a passion and a purpose and just executing with conviction, right? That execution, it starts with the passion, it starts with the purpose, the goal, and then it's about executing. Do you have a plan are you willing to go out and execute on a disciplined, consistent basis, right? Because that's a great starting point, and you can have the best plan and strategy in the world, but at the end of the day, the execution, the effort, the activities is really what's going to make it come to life. And that's really where the work is all about, right? The strategy, I always say, is sort of relatively easy. It's the execution that really separates, champions. And again, with that will come inevitable challenges, right? Crystal clear in his passion about paying it forward. He saw how much people poured into him, and he was like, I am committed to continue to pay this forward and create my legacy by, giving people inspiration and showing them what I can overcome and be that exemplar, be that leader by example, right? Major sacrifices that you can overcome. I ask yourself, when you face adversity, how do you respond? You can't, you can say things to other people, but you can't sort of lie to yourself. So think about that. When you've had challenges, big, small, anywhere in between, how do you respond? And how could you perhaps do it more effectively in the future, right? There's always room for improvement for all of us, right? We all have the capacity to exercise that courage to face uncertainty, embrace the process, but it's a choice. We all have the capacity. I have no doubt about it. We all have infinite potential. The question is, are you willing to step out of your comfort zone and do it, right? We're capable of amazing things, every single one of you, but are you really tapping into that potential? And it is really about activating your unique potential. And I love this last part, environment will shift the individual before the individual will shift the environment, and just be really conscientious about choosing your environment. And that means that's your family, your friends, your work environment, all of it, right? Life is awfully short. Be purposeful about with whom you spend your time and what you're doing. And as I get older, I really do. I think about that a lot. It's like, wow, I'm 51 years old. It's like, wow, past the 50. I mean, I feel like I'm a little kid. I remember, just yesterday. But as you get older, believe me, you start to recognize how precious, time is. And I much rather go after it and fall flat on my face than never go after it. So make it count. Any other thoughts or perspective from anybody? Come on, one more.
I got something, Josh.
In the sports world, there's a lot to admire because you hear that story all the time. I mean, to me, like growing up in LA, Magic Johnson was the biggest story because he was like God and still is treated like God. But then like everyone thought maybe you'll pass away. No one knew what was going to happen with the whole AIDS epidemic. He's still alive. He's
Thriving.
Healthier than most people.
Yep.
In this world, and he's probably done more off the court than on the court. So there's so many good stories to get inspired by. So it doesn't surprise me it's in the sports world because I think they're trained to get to that level. And if something happens, they know how to turn on something that we can all learn from.
And, I'll just say, as you say that, being a former athlete, I played college football, like you get instilled that repetition, the discipline, the consistency in practice, right? And that is a major lesson in life. And it certainly applies to our business. And how many people are consistently practicing? How many people are consistently practicing their scripts, consistently lead generating and prospecting every day? I can tell you a very small minority of agents, period, both within this office and in this industry. So, the best thing about being a real estate agent is the autonomy and the flexibility, right? Because you get to be your own boss and you don't have to answer to anyone other than yourself and perhaps your family. And it's also the worst thing because you don't have the level, of accountability that you would have if you had a 9-to-5 job. But you can create that choice if you make it happen, right? You can create that level of accountability, right? With a peer partner, being on a team, having a coach, there's many ways to create it. But that's a choice that I would encourage everyone to make. And I just had lunch with two great agents here that are amazing. And we were just talking about that first and foremost principle of accountability, right? And creating accountability. I encourage all of you to do that. I have tremendous accountability in my life. So when I don't feel like it, it really is no option because I've got so many people to answer to. So create that for yourself. And I think being an athlete, as Brandon just said, that's almost a given, particularly in team sports. So any of us have played team sports at any sort of competitive level can relate to that. Any other, Jerry?
I was just going to say, I was just going to say, like, I don't even think you need to have had a terrible experience or be an athlete, right? I also had lunch with two agents today, And it reminded me that energy attracts energy. One age, I was like, so hey, how's business? And this guy was like, mortgage rates are terrible. I just lost this agreement. I got nothing in the pipeline. And the other guy was like, life's good. Like he was like, I'm healthy, I'm happy, this is a beautiful day. And I just was like, man, if I had to hire somebody to work with, I want to work with that guy. And he just we all have something good that's going on, and we have to remember that. And we could just focus on that and not on the negative. And I think energy just is energy, and the people that want to hire us want to hire positive energy, and especially in an unstable market.
Yeah.
That was just my friendly reminder today. I was just like, there's two guys sitting across from me. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the guy that's feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
And I know
Totally.
his real life is really tough. He's
Yeah.
got like a really tough life, but he just didn't lead with that. He just led with something really positive.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And that's a great point, because again, who wants to be around negative people, right? It's like, come on, if you have to fake it for the moment, and we all go through difficult times where we're not in the best mood, we're all human beings, but it becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy when you at least put the smiley face on and you present yourself that way. And again, it's the law of attraction.
I just remember what everybody was doing in March 2020 and what we all did to, bounce or look ahead. We all had a shift then. This is definitely not the same. We're basically open for business. We just have to recalibrate. And I think we all have it in us. We have to-
Yep. Get your unfair share. Like people complaining about the market. There's still so many people doing so well. So that's just a bunch of garbage. Does it mean it doesn't come with challenges? Of course it's going to come with challenges. There are always going to be challenges. Embrace those challenges and you can overcome them. Jeff.
Not one person in this room or collectively all of us together are going to change the market. There's not one thing that there's nothing we need to do.
Yep.
So it's like people are buying and selling. People are buying and selling, like you said. What's that? Yeah. So people are buying and selling. What are they doing? They're no different than you.
Yep.
Right? Maybe just shift your business. I just worked with several people who are first-time home buyers. It was very difficult. Now I'm focusing on some other things because of mortgage rates, but there's business out there to be done. You just got to find it.
Absolutely. Yep. Awesome. Anyone else? All right. Michael, do you want to go now or in a little bit?
I don't know.
Anything? Okay, well, at least to introduce I know there are a couple new faces. Michael is our broker of record. He's a huge fundamental part of our office and our culture. He's part of our agent leadership council, and he's a tremendous resource.
So typically every other Tuesday, I'll do the broker meeting where if I have something important to say, we'll do a class. If anything comes up during the week, I'll always send out an email. There really hasn't been any thing that's been crazy lately. I'm thinking back in March 2020, they were
It
doing
was just one up,
updates, things
minute to minute.
Yeah, every day there was something new. So, just everybody focus on business, lead generation. I have a bunch of new agents that come to me and are like, well, what do I do? I'm like, whatever you feel like getting up every morning and doing.
Well, it's real simple. Have 20 conversations. I hate whatever that means, whether it's knocking on a door, whether it's picking up the phone, whether it's going to a store, have 20 purposeful conversations about real estate every day. And I guarantee if you do that on a consistent basis, you'll have a big business. Believe me, whatever that looks like for the individual. Yeah. So big time. And the other thing you just reminded me, and Serena, maybe next Tuesday, we are beginning a contest for the whole office for the last quarter of the year. And we're going to fill in a lot more details then, but we're breaking it down into sort of newer agents and more experienced agents. So we're going to give everyone sort of an equal playing field. And basically you're going to get points for, taking a new, taking a new listing. What were the? Thank you. There you go. That's it. So and everyone will get a point for each one of those things, and whoever gets the most points, we're going to be giving away tickets to Family Reunion, which is our big annual event, which this year happens to be in Anaheim, so it won't be in another state. So we expect a tremendous turnout, and those tickets, quite frankly, are $1,000. So we're excited about the contest. It'll create a lot of energy, a lot of great healthy competition, and there'll be some great prizes at the end. So next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. myself and the ALC are going to outline all the rules and how it's all going to work. And part of that whole process will also be some classes that some of our top agents will be teaching around pricing, around buyer strategies, around different things to get listings and to put, buyers and sellers into escrow. So it'll be a contest, but it'll also have a lot of value surrounding it, being taught by a lot of our top agents. So come next Tuesday here at the same time. All right, Brandon, do you want to maybe kick us off with a little bit about what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, so that's the number one question I think everyone more than ever has spoken about is what's happening in the market, because you'll hear two different things and I hear it every day. So I kind of look at the markets being a little bit bipolar because it's super active over here, maybe crickets over there. So that's a good time to know your numbers, know your stats, gather, figure it out yourself instead of so much listening to people that may not be in the business like you. So in preparation for my point, I looked at the $5 to $10 million, since we are in Beverly Hills. We are one of the best real estate cities in the world. So if we look at where the money is still coming into, it's Los Angeles. Last year was the best year on record, 2021. It's undisputable. So in August of 2022, I was looking at the $5 to $10 million count of transactions that took place in our neighborhood here from Hollywood all the way to Malibu. So last year there were 43. So that was a big number, 43 total. Okay. This August there were 44. Okay. So knowing numbers, you can twist a conversation of people who really don't know. And if you look at the 10 to $20 million range, last year there was 11. This August, 18. So August last year, 11. So August 2022 outperformed a record month of August last year. So that's in the uber high end. We're hearing about the Kim Kardashian purchases of 70 million. So we're going to continue to see and hear that. More properties may linger because they're overpriced to begin with, but when they come down that's still super high price, they'll sell. So I think that's the point with the uber high end and just the importance of pricing it properly. So that's pretty much what I just wanted to.
And the other lesson out of that for sure is like real estate is local. I mean, very local. So, and again, it comes back to like know your client, understand where they are, where they want to go, what are their goals, and then make sure you can put the conditions and the opportunities in that context, right? So one client may be way over here in this neighborhood looking for something else, and you can't necessarily take the same conditions and apply them to both at all.
Exactly. So otherwise, guys, now is the time, right? After next week will be the second half of the Jewish holiday. It might be a little quiet next week, but after that, there's nothing until Thanksgiving. So that is the golden time to prospect and get out there. So
Love it.
yeah.
Thank you, Brandon. All right, Serena, you're.
Yeah.
Little bit of recognition. Again, these are weekly closings, and you can see I'm not going to name every name, but still very, very robust, a little bit down relative to what we're used to seeing. But nevertheless, still a lot of deals being had over the last couple of weeks. And yes, it is like the Jewish holidays. And we have a very strong Jewish group here in the office and in this market as a whole. So things are a little bit slower even today and just as of late. But with that said, still doing some great stuff. So great round of applause to everyone on this list. I see Maxwell there. I think she just stepped away. But and then again, a reminder for tomorrow's event, the one thing. It's just a little flyer, and it's again, that book is one of the best books, and it's often referenced by top business people in every industry. So highly encourage everyone to attend that event tomorrow at 10 a.m. Any questions around that? Sonia?
It's here.
No, it's LAX Marriott. Yeah.
What's the event about?
It's about the book, The One Thing. What's the, basically how to prioritize, how to be very focused and purposeful, and obviously be about really how's it pertain to real estate. So yeah, we're flying in a top agent / coach who goes around the country and teaches this class. Yep, and it's free. So any other questions on that? tomorrow, 10 a.m. It is, I think, sold out because I had some people go to the Eventbrite. Don't worry about it. Just show up. I'll be there. Serena will be there. I'll make sure you get in. Yep. And if you need the details, just ask Serena or anyone else. Cool. All right. So we've got two great special guests. This one gentleman I know really particularly well, John Adams, and I met Nate through John. John's one of the most, smart, purposeful business owners, leaders, has become a really good friend. If I may say, I always put my foot in my mouth maybe a little bit, but had been sort of with our group, left to go to a competitor that you guys would know well. I won't mention names, and is now, basically back. So we're really excited to have him back. Has a very extensive background in the commercial field, started his own commercial brokerage with Nate. So these guys are business owners. They know how to run teams, brokerages. And now John has also got into the residential space as well, doing a strong focus on new development. So we're really happy to have these guys here. Come on up, guys. Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys want to sit or stand?
I'm down to sit.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Yep.
How's it going, guys?
Yep. So why don't you guys, whoever wants to start off, just background, like how did you get into real estate? John actually used to work with Equinox. Funny enough, I was an executive there. We never knew each other there, but we know some common people. So maybe a little bit of background on how you both got into real estate, how you know each other, and then.
Yeah, so I'll say, I guess first how we met, which is kind of that situation. So I did work at Equinox. I was in operations, but basically running KPIs, data analytics, just like any regional sales manager.
KPIs are key performance indicators. So a lot of people don't.
Yeah. So basically my whole job at Equinox was to look at raw data with customers, and we've got who are effectively clients, right? And or members. And then we've got a super young staff that's primarily commission only. So my job was to basically build out our CRM and our sales force so that we could start to make higher level decisions based on the data and the money that our customers were spending, kind of decide, in all these different regions and locations, how can we use this data to make better business decisions? So that was kind of my background. One of my best friends was a commercial broker at Marcus & Millichap, and he was working with Nate, and he was really struggling to build his team. Monster broker, like a few million a year in commissions himself, like golden child for Marcus & Millichap. Boiler room, cold calls, 600 a week, 7 days a week for 10 years. He probably did it. And he called me and said, hey, I'm having a hard time growing the team. I'm balancing staff and leads and, commissions and trying to grow my own business. I'm really struggling with how to do this. So I basically spent 8 weeks with him on the weekend, helping him kind of navigate through his business, putting some structure in place. And that's when I met Nate. Nate at the time was like your, protege for the monster broker. So he was like rising star, rookie of the year, all these things. I think he made a couple $100,000 while he was still in college, like just pounding the phones. So between he and Mike, they had this really good culture of like working really hard, putting all the time in, being super diligent, but they were struggling to grow the team outside of this, smaller handful of guys that they had. So they effectively made me an offer. I came over and worked with Nate and Mike, this broker, to help build our team. I don't know, you want to say the rest?
Yeah, I know, that's perfectly explained. Yeah, working with John was a blast, and really, we were a small company within the giant of Marcus & Millichap, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can understand that, whether you're an independent agent or growing your own team, it's you're essentially a business. And so we had to bring in a lot of the formality to running a business while integrating the brokerage component of it. A lot of brokers, they're really good at closing deals. They're not so good at infrastructure and operations. And I think that's probably a weakness a lot of us can talk about for days. But that's where John and I really excelled at. And so we worked in tandem, recruiting, establishing marketing processes, a lot of sales training. He really had the operational background. I have a lot of Salesforce background as well. So we really kind of worked together, built that kind of organization to the point where we decided to leave Marcus Millichap. And then in 2018, we started our own firm, which was tough at first, but got to a point where I think we're about 60 agents. And I think now they're doing about 30 million in sales, or probably going to do about 30 million in sales in fees this year.
That's commission, guys, right?
Commission.
Yeah.
So it's, we both kind of went in different directions. I stepped in as a CEO for the firm right after we started. My skill set, although I did enjoy the brokerage, was really training, educating, helping individual brokers who have the weaknesses in scaling their business and figuring out how to get there. I enjoy that. I enjoy working with others to get to their goal.
By the way, sorry to interrupt because I'll forget. These guys are going to teach Ignite. So starting next week, which believe me, you don't want to miss that. Even if you're experienced, I would come and watch these guys teach over the next 6 weeks, teach Ignite. So
Awesome.
I'll plant that seed right now,
Thank you.
especially for any of the new agents. That's a given. You're in for a great treat for
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome.
But that's basically the gist of it. We built up a big, massive team, started our own brokerage. We still own a portion or involved with that brokerage. And now it's expanded into Phoenix and New York. I took, when I left, Nate assumed the CEO role and basically took it into another place. And that's when I met Josh and Paul Morris and kind of came on this sort of similar consulting role to help just be an additional level of support for commercial agents and, the Keller Williams network. But I took a year off to go just do deals on my own. I kind of, had the itch. I wanted to, close some more bigger deals and make some more bigger checks. Nate, shortly thereafter, I guess about a year after, got into the private equity side. So if you guys have investors or, you come across a really good deal and you're not sure, how can I structure this in such a way that's basically what Nate's been doing for the last few years. I think you guys flipped 10 CVS properties.
Yeah, we did about 100 million in buy and sell. I was in charge of buying the properties. It's particularly niched in triple net properties, so single tenant, net lease, credit tenants. We created value by finding leases that were shorter term or parcels that were undervalued and that we can revitalize or improve. It's very similar to the home flips, but you really don't need to put too much capital into it. You really just got to restructure a lease with a tenant. So I spent 2 years doing that, buying and selling. And then I just decided that I wanted to kind of be a little bit more independent. And so just kind of, John was talking about coming back to KW. I was interested. I know a lot of people in kind of this community. And so I wanted to participate, I think. And that's where we joined a few weeks ago. And so still getting my feet in the sand, but enjoying it. And I really like a lot of the people that I've met here. You guys seem to be really great, and I enjoy meeting you guys. And there's a few that I've known from the past.
I saw you
but
knew Daphne.
Yeah, I know Daphne.
Yeah.
And if there's, I'd love to meet everybody individually. And if there's anything that we can do to help in the commercial side, there's a lot of crossover from the residential end. And even if you're just curious about certain clauses and leases or analysis methods, anything that you guys are curious about, or if there's a client that's interested in a certain property, but it may not be your expertise, maybe we can help, and we'd love to.
Love it. John, do you want to talk for a minute just about even your residential now experience as well? And then I'll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So I'd never done a residential deal in my life. I, showed up at Keller Williams, and there was an agent at Compass that runs a very tight ship in a particular neighborhood in here, and in Beverly, you might know who he is. And at the time, a friend of a friend was meeting with him about listing it. He said, "Oh, it's worth 2.7, and this is why you should sell off market, et cetera, et cetera." And she called me and said, "Hey, what do you think it's worth?" And I was like, what, to be honest, it's not rocket science pricing out the value of these properties. You got to watch out for selling it off market. I think it's probably worth more like 295. There's a lot of work. You're probably going to get a couple offers. And she basically said, "I want you to sell it." I said, "Well, I don't sell residential. I've never done that before, That was the end of 2018. And I said, fine, sold it, closed at 2.95. We have a few offers. It was like exactly kind of just what I had anticipated. And since then, I've
I
probably
remember that.
closed 30 residential deals or so. You guys are never going to see me at like a listing appointment. I don't make calls. I don't market it. I don't do any of that. I sort of became this like go-to person for sticky commercial deals and weird residential opportunities. Like something's on the side of the hill and we don't know how this works, or you know, I've never sold a property dealing with the coastal commission for new construction before. And as a means of that, and through my old relationships, there's a big developer in there called Thomas James Homes. You guys might
I'm sure you guys,
see them around. And a friend of a friend introduced me to their acquisitions guy, and he said, hey, this is what we're looking for. And I said, same thing again, I don't really do residential. And he said, well, you know, it's more like he was a Mark Smilachek guy, you know, so he came from a commercial background. He said, but we're just looking for sites. So if something comes across your desk, you know, this is how you would underwrite it. I said, oh, this makes sense, price per square foot, what you buy it for, and this is how long it's going to take, and this is what the capital stack is going to look like for you guys, and this is what your exit's going to look like. And so that was maybe 2020. And since then, I've done about 8 escrows with them. I got probably 30 million in construction that's coming up in the next 18 months or so. So that's sort of like just a byproduct of the relationships and stuff like that. But I don't, like I said, I don't compete for listings. I'm not on park benches. I don't make calls or send out mailers or anything like that. But it's something I do enjoy. And for better or worse, now I get a fair amount of like phone calls from my sphere and friends of friends saying, hey, I've got this grandma who wants to tear her house down. How much is this worth? And who would buy it? And how do we structure this? So that's kind of like a smaller part of my business, but primarily my business is still focused on 1031 exchange and kind of commercial referral stuff. So I sold gas stations, raw land, triple net buildings, multifamily, like we did a farm, wineries, like anything, because on the investment side, it just comes down to the P&L and what the Excel sheet says it's worth. And so it's a little bit easier for me, but the residential stuff, particularly development, is a really good in for you guys if you're new or if you're trying to close some big deals and you understand, like, how does Bjorn Ferrugia get a listing like this? Or how does Sally Foster Jones get a listing like this? And it's because they have these relationships with these merchant developers. And so understanding the value of the land and, you know, how that can work, it's a lot more similar to a commercial.
it's a very
product.
analytical, these guys, like, that's
Yeah.
obviously, these guys are really smart guys, but if they take a very and everyone has that opportunity to understand the data, the analysis, and that's a great way to create value without having to have this extensive track record, which is very different, quite frankly, than the traditional huge brokers, you know, residential brokers, and that are largely sphere based. And it doesn't mean that they're not smart and this and that, but you can accelerate and put yourself ahead of the curve if you're really adept at understanding the analytics and the math behind it all, right? Because most agents don't, quite frankly, and most of it's like, in John and Nate, it's not typically, some of their deals are a little bit more technical that probably some people wouldn't be able to handle, but even the basic ones, just having that fundamental understanding of the analytics will definitely put you way ahead of a lot of your competitors.
Yeah, and even like, if you guys have met Dario, Dario sells a lot of raw land, and sometimes he'll even sell like a single family, you know, he'll do the land. So for me, it was, I guess I kind of naturally gravitated towards it because it's really analytical, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of negotiating, there's not a lot of, you know, room in those deals. It's just say like, hey, this is what the market is. There are 8 or 10 people that buy this product in these areas, and you know, you can shop them around and try and figure it out. But other than that, yeah, still all of our business is commercial oriented, and I'm excited to work with Nate again. I don't know if we'll be building like a big commercial team or what. We still got to kind of figure out where we're going to land. But yeah, it's just, I've been a student of the game ever since I got in. I was always interested in real estate. I studied accounting in college, so I've just been trying to learn as fast as I can, which I think is something that probably makes agents like more successful. It's really like a race. how fast can you accumulate these relationships and this information to make yourself just like more valuable to your clients.
And look, one of the other things here, and everyone has this opportunity, find a niche, whatever that is, whether it's a geography, whether it's a type of product, whatever that may be, and become the expert at that. And then in time, you can start to diversify. But I think that's definitely what these guys have done. And everyone here, no matter where you are, can find that opportunity, like, which comes back to like, know your superpowers, know what makes you unique, and lean into those things, you know. And you can, there's so many different angles in real estate. That's one of the most fascinating elements to me. You know, there's residential, there's commercial, there's all different nuances within that, you know, going after certain types of clients, whether it's really being focused on investors or developers. There's so many different angles. Find one that caters to your strengths, that you're passionate about, and become that expert. And then in time, you can diversify, right? So I think that's another major lesson from any top producer, and certainly these guys for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great so far. And
Yep.
just trying to stay purposeful and focused, and everything Josh preaches is like, you know, something any like real estate coach would say.
Yeah. John's been around me a lot. He's heard it a lot. So I want to give, before I go to these guys, like, come back a little bit. I know you're still trying to figure out the vision and whatever, but like, a couple things. Number one, what would you tell, you know, a newer agent on what the keys to success are? Let's start there.
Yeah, and I've
Or any agent, you know?
probably helped 50 people get their licenses, because I had a really traumatic experience getting licensed when I went to Marcus and Millichap. And I think, like, more than anything, what I cannot impress enough is that, like, you have to be willing to geek out and do the extra work. You know, like, you'll find that your biggest barrier to making more money as you become more successful is for sure time. And everyone wants to poke around at these deals and see these listings and stuff in time that should be dedicated for prospecting or developing relationships or whatever. You know, when Nate and I built this brokerage, we had, I think, 5 agents to start. And by the time we exited Marcus and Millichap, we had 60 agents. And we had this kind of expression, like, from dark to dark. From the time it's dark in the morning until the time it's dark at night, you need to be prospecting. All this other bullshit, pardon my French, about like, should we be looking at this, or maybe I should try this or that, needs to be done in dark hours, at night, on the weekends. You know, like, if you're a new agent, you didn't go see 10 open houses, you didn't have your 20 conversations, and like, what are you doing? You know, you have to be willing to go do that stuff. But in the off hours, like I said, it's a race. It's a race for you to accumulate this experience. And Nate always used to call it like proof of performance, right? When you're a new agent, you pick up the phone, you need case studies and you need the details to be able to sound like you know what you're doing, right? Or else you're going to lose that listing to Sally or Bjorn or whatever. So when Brandon says, hey, here's the data, you got to know these numbers. If you have that, that might be the difference between you winning that listing or not, right? So like, my piece of advice would be like, you have to geek out and get way down into the details, but do it in the off hours. If your business isn't to a point yet where you're making the money that you want to make, you've got to be willing to commit that extra time to do all the like deep diving and digging.
Yeah, you guys, you can have the best social media, you can know the contracts inside and out, you can have all the best marketing. If you don't have clients, which is prospecting, it doesn't matter. Right. So I mean, it just doesn't matter. And I cannot impress that upon everyone enough. And look, it does, especially like build the foundation. When you do the heavy lifting initially, it reaps major rewards in the future. I mean, again, I speak from my own career. With all due respect, I'm definitely one of the top team leaders in the country. I think that's a pretty objective statement. And that comes from, I relentlessly prospected. I called every freaking agent in the greater area for a couple years straight. And when I speak about that, that's when I was running my other offices. And here I know them all well too. And now, quite frankly, I don't even have time to make those calls because all the calls just keep coming into me. But if I never did that, then it would never happen that way. So again, when you do the heavy lifting out of the gate, it reaps major rewards in the future. And recognize that what you do now does not bear fruit to sometime in the future. But most people don't have the foresight, the discipline, the consistency to put the foundation in initially. And that's what these guys have done and why they're as successful as they are.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I was in a similar role. I had to co-call agents after I was co-calling landlords. It's not great, but you got to do it. And at the end of the day, it's about how many seeds you're planting. John, our background in Marcus, it's a little bit of a different environment culturally. I don't know if you know about that type of firm, but cold calling was, you had
Religion.
to be on the phone
It's
nonstop. And if you weren't, you felt out of place. If everybody in the office is doing it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say
Is what you
always,
felt,
Yeah.
but if everybody in the office is doing something like that, and they're always on the phone and call log is always on the top of everybody's inbox, you recognize, and then you start to see the correlation between the top callers and the top producers. That's when it starts to become an understanding of how important the metrics are. And then you really stop wondering like when my next lead is going to come, but about all the effort that you just need to apply and know that it'll come. And I think something like that was, Josh mentioned it a little earlier, but metrics for new agents, experienced agents, like if you don't know your numbers, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And not just transactions in a market, but really understanding how many calls does it take for somebody to pick up, right? What's your contact conversion ratio? If you don't know that, you got to figure that out. Out of every call, how many times are you getting a proposal, right? An opinion of value, are you able to provide to the seller? If you don't know that, figure it out, right? These are the very easy things that you can take, right? There are tools like salesforce.com, which I don't know if anybody, has looked into it, but having a CRM as a broker, that's really important. You have to consider that because if you just want to be building relationships, you need to be prospecting and you need to house all the data that you're generating through your efforts. And you need to know, are you improving or are you not? And a lot of it's,
And if you don't have the data, you're winging it. You have no idea.
and it's the greatest because brokers have a certain type of personality, I would say, on average. And it's like, you can ask them, how are you doing? And I'm crushing it. And it's like, no, but give me the actual, how are you crushing it? You're like, just so many deals, and then at that point you're like, okay, so they don't really understand what makes or breaks their business. And I think that's where, for newer experienced agents, you can put a little bit of time and attention into housing all the metrics, understanding what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis and how it's resulting in closings. So you got to know contact conversion, proposal conversion. Of those proposals, how many are you getting listings or how many are buy side, depending on your focus, and then escrows and closings. It's really like 5 or 6 metrics. You understand those, you understand the progress that you're making, and it's not too difficult of a metric to track if, especially if you're not doing a large amount or a large.
And
quantity of
as
calls.
Nate's talking, it's amazing. It just makes me think like the discipline, the consistency, the environment that exists at these top, bigger commercial brokerages. There's so much we could take from there and bring here and apply to our business with that level of discipline and consistency that, quite frankly, residential agents, I'm making a broad generalization. There are, of course, some exceptions, are just like lazy, relatively speaking, period. I'm just going to say it's not even questionable. Right. So
Well, sometimes they don't
yeah.
know. Sometimes they just don't know what they
Well,
don't
of
know.
course, that's a big part of it, in
Yeah.
fairness. Yes, I think, and that's why, as you're saying that, like, it's I do a bit of it. I'd flow coaching, we collect numbers, but it makes me think as they're talking,
Yeah.
like, I need to instill this more in you guys to create more awareness. Because to Nate's point, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, and that's not your fault. Or, it's really like
Yeah.
my fault as a leader to not create that awareness. Once the awareness is created, then it's your choice to either do it or not.
Yeah, and it's also, I guess, to that point, when we look back at what our group had done in 2015 and what, how do we turn a $3.5 million team into a $10 million team? Fees, still, right? Like,
Right.
Commission. like,
That's GCI, guys. Like, there aren't too many
How do we
residential people that do that
how do we
anywhere.
actually get that, like, materially? And I think for us and for our partner, it was surprising when we did that diagnostic. Like you said, you have to know, like, your business is, how many contacts do you have? How often are you contacting them? And it's been my experience that even when I go through it for myself, I'm surprised, like once a quarter, I try to go through and say, like, where did my deals come from? How did I get there? If I could go back in time, what would I have spent more time doing? It is, even today, like, it's still surprising for me, like, oh, wow, I should have spent more time doing this or doing that. So that diagnostic is one thing, but then having like knowing what to do with that data is basically like what Nate is best at, and that's why I'm excited to work with him again, and we can hold each other accountable to kind of like taking the next step.
And part of that, what they're talking about is really being a business owner, like tracking your numbers, having systems. You know, that's one of the things that really, in theory, distinguishes Keller Williams. It's one of the things that absolutely drew me to this company 10 years ago. You know, being a former corporate executive, being a business owner myself, is the KPIs and the systems, and that's read the red book. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent obviously talks a ton about that. But how many agents, even in the top office, being right here, actually apply those things? Quite frankly, only a small fraction. So I just want to continue to create more and more awareness, and having these guys here will help with all of that. But the resources, the tools, the systems are here. Then it's up to you to ask the questions, remain in curiosity, and then learn and apply, right? Because they all exist.
Yep.
Questions, come on. Yeah, Jeff.
I agree with you guys. I've worked well agents, other agents as well. I have several questions that I would ask them. I'll ask you. What are the conversations you're having with your clients, and what are your thoughts on the overall market?
Do you want to go first?
I mean, I only got
Go
back
ahead.
into, well, no, I was saying I only
Yeah,
got
I'd
back
say-
into.
I'd say, oh, wait, do I need, no, I got this guy.
Yeah.
Overall, the market, my impression is that there are a lot of there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines. I got a lot of clients that were investors that, you know, once COVID hit, they're like, this is gonna be 2008 again, and I'm not gonna miss the boat. I'm gonna get max leverage, I'm gonna buy everything. And they just didn't, cap rates didn't really move on commercial product like everyone was hoping that they would. So what do I see happening with the market? I see like a flush of cash coming into investment product like here pretty soon. Like my own opinion would be like maybe in the next 60 to 90 days.
Are there particular products that you think are going to reap the rewards of that more than?
I think multifamily, I think there's a lot of people, so like 10-year debt is something that people track a lot in the commercial space. And the market was hot in the investment world like it was in residential last year. It was like the investment world in 12, 13, 14, you know, so a lot of those people with 10-year debt, like that's coming due and they're gonna have to refi. They can look at this, look at that. Some of them are behind on payments, a lot of these mom and pop people. So I seriously think it's gonna be like blood in the water in the next 90 days. And for my clients, they're of that same opinion.
Can I ask, so residential, your commercial, your residential builders,
Mhm.
the deals that made sense?
Oh, no, it's tight. Underwriting
years
is
ago?
tight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like what they were willing to pay and everything like that, they're a lot more discerning. Like
Well,
there's,
are they gonna cut not cut corners, but like instead of like build that, you know, $3
Um,
million house, maybe build like the 2-3 million.
I'm gonna say no. They're still maxing it out on floor area ratio, you know, because like it makes sense for the developer to build and max out the lot, like their cost is so incrementally low, and in these neighborhoods, it's still 1,000 to 2,000 a square foot or whatever. But what I am seeing, I've seen a lot of unsophisticated people walking away from like RTI opportunities and just throwing it out on the market like, oh, this is, you build it. You know, I got it through the permits, but like now this is scary and it's not, you know, the underwriting is not as aggressive as it used to be. So like, did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Is that kinda
so
good?
I mean, basically, like your Thomas.
Yeah, the
Right.
developers are tight and they're not, so they stopped pre-selling maybe, and not just Thomas James, AMG or Revere, like I could go down the list. They used to just like get it through RTI and they put it out on the market 6 months before it was gonna be completed, and they'd get like crazy pricing. And then 6 months later, it's done, and the developers are thinking like, oh, we shouldn't have sold that. You know, we thought we shot for the moon and we sold it there. And then by the time they're actually getting certificate of occupancy and finishing construction, it's like they should have sold it for more. So they kind of pulled back maybe 6 or 7 months ago, and interest rates started to get weird. And basically like said, okay, if we're gonna pre-sell it, let's like just, we don't need to be so aggressive. So I think the cycle was like, they pre-sold everything because it's a higher rate of return on their cash when they do that. And then they wish they didn't. and then now they're trying to again. So, I mean, I've got a deal coming out in 60 days that was like, we put it in escrow in August of last year, and they were countering everybody at like 3.4 million, 3.4, 3.425, 3.42, and now it's gonna come out at 3.1. So it's still a big high price per square foot. They're still maxing it out, but they're leaning back towards like the pre-pandemic pricing strategy of like, hey, let's put as little capital in as we can. And if we can just get a for sure exit and save on staging and carrying costs and whatever, then they're trying to do that. That's kind of my 2 cents.
Love it. Herschel.
So I've known you for quite a while.
Yeah, for a bit.
So what keeps you motivated, keeps you inspired? I mean, it's easy to replace it once you hit a certain level.
Yeah.
Good question.
You know, I would say like, I love being a student of the game, you know, and to be like super frank and honest, that's something that I'm actually working on, you know, not like diversifying so much. Like I'm in a pretty like a fortunate position that I get a lot of like referral business, and I partner with a lot of people on deals. So for me, I don't really have, you know, a core business, right? And so like what I'm actually trying to work on is to like stop having such like ADD about all these different product types and classes, because now I think like, okay, like I've got some good experience in single family development. So now let's do multifamily, and then, oh, let's do like in New York now they're converting offices and condos. Like, oh, can I like be the first mover on this in LA? And so what keeps me motivated is actually learning more and continuing to do these different or higher level deals in different asset classes. But like I said, it's like probably the worst thing for like my pocket is like doing a little bit of everything all the time. I should
Narrow and deep.
narrow in and like work the relationships that I have instead of like spending a little bit too much time bouncing around. How about you, Nate?
And he's getting married.
And I'm getting married.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in a little bit of a different position. I've kind of transitioned out of the principal side and really forming my brokerage business again from scratch, I call it. I think I know a few strategies and tactics that can help give me an advantage. But I think from like a motivation standpoint, I really want to build something that I can pass on to my future kids. I think that's something that's very clear to me. Something for my family. I'm very much like that traditionalist, and I enjoy working and educating as much as I can, whether it be with agents or with clients. And so if I ever have opportunities to do that, that's kind of what excites me. It'll get me out of bed because it to me, it feels like I'm helping. And I see that I have the self gratification, I guess. But it really feels like I'm making a difference. And that's probably what drives me a little bit more than just, closing deals and making checks.
I can tell you this, I don't know Nate nearly as well as John, but I know these guys are just natural leaders. And you guys have heard me say it time and time again, leaders give with no expectation. And I know enough about these guys that they love to give and educate and positively impact lives. And honestly, the results are just a natural byproduct of creating value for others. And I know that's how I live my life. And when you start to do that at a high level, everything takes care of itself, but you got to stay in action and motion,
Actually, when I first started, something interesting, like just in the brokerage space, I don't know why, but when another agent nearby was having problems and I'd be helping them with their deal, I mean, really no strings attached. I was curious about what they were working on. I'd be able to apply whatever I knew. And over time, that kind of translated into way more business than me actually prospecting. So there is a direct reflection, but it wasn't intentional to get that business. It was like curiosity. So you let it run and you take the personalization and, a little extroversion, right? And so you're working with this individual and you're helping them. And then it kind of flows a little more naturally, but that
so there's a statement, and I'm a firm believer, the teacher learns the most, right? So believe me, and I speak from a lot of experience, when you start to do that and create enough value for others, the amount of opportunities that fall in your lap are vast. And I know these guys, definitely that's a big part of their lives, right? but you have to build the foundation coming back to that first. That there's a reason they're at the level that they're at now. And quite frankly, myself as well, is because we did a lot of the heavy lifting. It didn't just happen magically. You got to earn your way into that by really doing the fundamentals for a long period of time. Who else? Come on, Ian.
Hi.
Then we'll go to Sonia.
My question to both of you guys would be, I know you said in order to be successful, you have to pretty much geek out. What are the ways that we can learn more about the commercial space without actually having to, I know the first question would be, or the first answer would be like join a team, right? To learn more. Outside of that, do you have any like websites or maybe something that you guys provide yourself where you can just learn about, the commercial space?
Yeah, good question. Joining a team is for sure the best way to do it because you learn through osmosis, right? Like Josh talks about that culture that exists at these commercial shops. And so I think my first year on our team, we closed like 190 deals. So when you're
How many people on the team? I'm curious.
we had 8
Something like
in
that.
the first
It
year.
was
Okay.
under, it was under
Yeah.
10, I think.
It's like
Wow.
yeah. So
That's
by
20
so-
deals each.
So when the guy next to you gets
There's a little
literally next to you in the
Yeah.
office,
Yeah, I
gets the
know, it wasn't.
call, and you
Yeah.
understand how they came up with the pricing and what those objections are, and the escrow fell apart. Well, now everyone in the room kind of knows. So that is for sure the best way. It's the most costly way because you can have a split with someone. It's the most demanding way to do it. That's for sure the best. Other than that, we could spend a little bit of time with you, but I would say like there's a CCIM course that you could do that a lot of people do when they first get started. It's not cheap. It's like maybe $5,000 or $6,000. You can also take it in pieces. That's kind of like, it's a designation for you to stick that on the end of your name. You need to close a certain amount of deals on top of the education requirement. So I tell everyone like, go check that out first. But then honestly, like the MLS is a pretty good resource for you to understand some of that stuff just by poking around. Because although most commercial product won't make it to the MLS, you can see listing and closing prices in the MLS. So I would say, look at LoopNet, look at CCIM, check out some of this stuff on the MLS. And then I think somewhere I've got like a blanketed or templated, like this is where you should start email, and I'll find it.
Let me ask you this, and I'm curious, you can just be totally, how about the idea, like, I know Ian, for instance, like Ian's, a very experienced, like very strong, has his own small team residential, would
Yeah.
like to break more into commercial and is always a student, like if him and or anyone else brought you a really strong lead, like partnering on that and sort of getting mentored, is that an avenue or not? I know different.
mean, I've got a $7 million escrow right now in Yorba Linda. It's a short-term retail deal. It's 2.5 years. It's a bye-bye baby as the tenant, and the CFO literally killed himself 2 weeks ago. So it's like maybe the company's going to go bankrupt. It's kind of insolvent. So like, yeah, partnering I would say is one thing, but to get started, I would, in particular, if you have a bunch of experience, look at a single family rental from top to bottom, because then you're going to understand multifamily. And then on the way far end of multifamily, which is very management intensive, there's a lot of gray area in the underwriting. On the way other end of multifamily, you have ground leases and triple net, and everything is just a measure of how much capital is the landlord going to need to dish out to maintain this property, and or how much time. So I would start with single family rentals and work your way into duplexes and triplexes. Selling a 6 unit, it's just like a triplex, although it's commercial. And then you'll understand like the leases and management, maintenance, and some of that underwriting. And then if you want to see a triple net deal, I'll send you a bunch. That's the best way to do it.
Cool. Sonia, we need the microphone, I think. Thanks. So the people on Zoom can hear.
I mean, I have so many questions. So I don't want to be a buzzkill, but so you guys are probably younger. So in my younger years, I was like that, very aggressive and motivated, inspired, and I did well. And then, this industry is complicated. It just kind of burns you out. It gets under your skin sometimes. So what do you do when you hit that point? You're like, ugh. So I'm dealing with sellers right now. You explain, they don't get it. They're in the mindset that it's still a seller's market. I'm trying to explain, you must reduce your price. They don't get it. So just things get really frustrated. So what do you do when you kind of get to that point where you're just like, okay, I've had enough? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
It's burned out before.
I've burned out. That's why I've been a broker. I went into sales management, went into the management team, went into investments, now back to brokerage. So I get it. I get cycling through the entire real estate industry just because I got to say, I think I would have saved myself a lot of heartache if I kept firm on doing what I'm excited about. I think a lot of times,
Including who you're working with,
and
by
that's
the
what I
way.
was going to say. A lot of times as a broker,
Right.
we're commission based. And so we take what we get. And I don't think that that's healthy, honestly. I think from like a personal end, emotionally, mentally, and a lot of these sellers, I mean, quite frankly, they're just not the greatest people. And sometimes you got to fire them. And I think that's an important consideration. And sometimes you won't realize what business you're missing out on until you've terminated a relationship that's toxic. And so I can't say that that's a solution, but I can say that like, it's a lot harder to get burnt out on something that you're genuinely excited about interacting with or dealing with.
And then a lot of that has to do with the people, again.
And so sometimes you do need to take a step back from a monetary, like a really close monetary incentive, just to like reignite that passion. And sometimes obviously you need to take the time off, and sometimes you got to work with other people. Sometimes bringing in somebody that works a different market than you, but you see that they've got that passion, it trickles, right? It's who you surround yourself with. He said a lot about environment. So if you can bring somebody into the fold, again, that's kind of cutting your commission, but you can't look at it that way. You're really investing into a better business, right? If you can bring them in, bring their energy and their excitement, maybe it'll trickle into your business and it'll give you that refuel that I think you might want to look for.
For me, the third party is always the solution, So like, whenever I'm going at and with this deal I just put into escrow, the buyer was very much like, no, I need under 9 million. I need, 25,000 square feet. It can be industrial, it can be flex or whatever. And he was just battling with me. And I was like, hey, look, here's the situation. There's a property over here, and this is the buyer for it. And I had him speak to one of my friends that's runs acquisitions for an industrial REIT. And he said, anything this size with this much clearance height, we'll pay $400 a square foot. And so for my client, trying to spend under $9 million and get 25,000 square feet, that means I had to tell him, you will be competing with this person and they're willing to pay $1 million more than you are. So if you want to hire me to work this buy side for you, we have to find a product that fits your needs, where we're not going to be competing with the top 5 industrial REITs in the United States. It's that guy, this friend of mine, just got on the phone with them and said, hey, if John finds one of these for you, we'll buy it straight from you. I said, this isn't me speaking anymore. I'm not arguing with you. It's that, Brandon talked about the numbers. They're having a third person be the reality of the situation. It's really what therapists are for, right? Like, you've got your own set of problems and demands, and your seller's willing to get here, and the market says it's this. Like, don't feel like you're by yourself to bridge that gap. If they're stuck at that, like this buyer was stuck at this $9 million number, and he said, it's going to be industrial, and it's going to be 9. It just literally does not exist. I brought in someone else to, that's just going to provide the data and give them a unique perspective. Sometimes people do it with contractors, I've been pretty successful with that. Like, oh, my home should be selling for this. I say, well, here's a contractor. He's going to do the work for you for 200, and then it will look like this comp. but what you're providing for me is not this comp.
Sometimes they need to hear the message from someone else. I mean, that's,
it's
that's
like,
right.
as much as I can, I tap out. Nate talked about like relationships and stuff like that. The first thing I do when there's just not an understanding there is to bring in a third-party professional that's gonna just frame up my opinion a little bit better.
Like
Yeah.
a fresh face.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is about stepping, not, either bring someone into the deal or stepping away from the deal
Yeah.
too. I hate to see,
And pretty
like, I
soon-
know these guys, like, I know them well enough, like, they're not gonna, they know their value. And if they don't have clients that appreciate that, then they're not gonna work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I speak for myself, like, I'm extremely aggressive in like, my recruit, and there are people I've learned over time, like, it's not worth my time. It's
Well,
not,
just take all your time.
Yep.
And you find that you're not doing anything else.
Yep.
You're trying to figure
Right, it's
out-
opportunity cost of all of our time. What else could we be doing with it and with whom? Right, and if you're not getting a great ROI on that person or that venture, then you gotta know when to walk away.
Yeah, and it's not giving up, just allow someone else to change the perspective and the narrative, because they hear it from someone else who doesn't have an interest in selling it like you do, it's really easy for. an
They're
agent to
much
say,
more apt to
"Drop the
listen.
Purchase price.
Sometimes they're not
you
listening,
know?
right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I got him to go down $500,000, but there's still $250,000 off.
Progress. Yeah,
Chipping
yeah.
away.
Yeah, we'll see.
Something
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
but
One more question, then because I don't want to, yeah, Richard.
Yeah, just you said bringing in a third party when you're having difficulty.
Mhm.
Is that the equivalent of showing someone like comps where you would do it in a residential situation?
Sort of. Go ahead. I want to hear Jonathan. I mean, sometimes showing them the data in and of itself
The
is,
data, the data, I always lead with the data.
Yep.
Because that's like my background, but I would say it's similar, but I wouldn't say it's the equivalent, If you told me it was $5 million and I said 4, and the rest of the room said 395, you know what I mean? And the rest of the room sells in that neighborhood and they're the top 28, 19 out of 20 agents, then it's just a little bit different. And that's why, like, get a big old listing agreement and then deal with it,
Yep.
Like, that's why the listing agreement's 6 months, or I don't know how long I'm gonna get searched for, a year,
Right,
whatever,
right.
right? But 2 years.
right.
So similar, but I would still say, like, having a Rolodex of professionals that
Okay.
will nail that down. Like, when I got pushed back on rate from this guy, like, oh, the interest rate is this. I said, okay, well, here's 2 other quotes on the property. They say the rate's that. So maybe your bank's not screwing you. Maybe you shouldn't have got divorced, or you should have been smarter with your money. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I always tap out. If it's something I just can't get there, I'll bring in another professional to try and get it.
Okay,
Yep.
so you don't necessarily have to show comps.
I do that on the front end, but if they're just like she's alluding to, like he's just not getting it, see if someone else can support your opinion a little bit better.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, real quick. Yeah.
Based on your scenario, I think you'll agree that if you don't deal with it right away, you'll get to the same eventuality. It'll just be several months or however much time down the line. So it's inevitable, but it's whether you decide what to focus on or not.
100%, I agree with you. And when I first started, got out of the ops and stuff, like managing agents and stuff like that, and started like really just closing my own deals, commission only and all that stuff. That's what I struggled with most, having the tough conversations early, and people talk about managing expectations. Like, I think what you're leading to is a little bit different. It's actually like getting aligned with the client. It's tough and it's hard when you're first getting started and you're counting, the dollars after you're split, and this, okay, we're in escrow. It's like, you have to get out in front and bulletproof that escrow as much as you can. And it's something I still struggle with. But because I want everyone to be cool and happy and it's fun, we can all make money. But like, it's hard sometimes to really get down to the brass tacks and face someone who's your client. Yeah.
Love it. You guys are awesome. Give these guys a great round. And